First off, I'd like to start the video with an apology and a confession. I totally clickbaited you. I quit the worst game I can't stop playing. Now before you comment, hear me out, because the reason is probably not what you think. It wasn't burnout. Even now, there's a big part of me that misses playing Tower Fantasy. It also didn't happen recently. The irony of it is, I stopped playing shortly after I released what is now my currently most successful video. Even while I was away, I regularly checked for news on the game and looked forward to future updates. In fact, there was one in particular I was looking forward to. Neon Genesis Evangelion is one of my favorite anime, so news of the collab with Toph was very welcome. After all, I still love Toph's gameplay and, to a certain extent, its world and characters. This was its chance to reel me back in after a several months long break, and I suspected this would be the case for a number of other players too. However, what should have renewed my interest in the game instead turned into the final nail in the coffin. They completely screwed up the collab. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. The story quest itself was fine. The writing was about what you'd expect for a crossover. Nothing groundbreaking, but nothing to write home about either. They nailed the visuals and fan service aspects, although it was quite funny to see an angel attack Miroria after I'd made jokes about the city looking like Ramiel. Getting to pilot the MX-00 Radiance, while not the pinnacle of mech combat, was entertaining enough. However, there were two key things that completely ruined the crossover quest for me. The first is that something like 75% of the quest's dialogue was missing its voice acting. Seriously, most of it is just Lynn and Shirley, but even they aren't consistent as to whether or not a line they're about to deliver has an actual voice line to go with it. And okay, I get it. If it was too expensive to get the OG voice actors to reprise Shinji, Asuka, and Rei, then I would have been fine with someone who can do a close enough impersonation. Hota doesn't exactly have Hoyoverse money to throw around, but at the same time, what we got was just so scuffed. You couldn't even get the voice actors for your own characters? It honestly would have been better if the entire thing was unvoiced. The second thing that constantly kept pulling me out of the moment was the fact that in half the cutscenes, it just straight up doesn't use your custom character, and uses the default model instead. This would immediately kill any kind of immersion they had built up whenever it happened. Look, if the game's engine couldn't handle rendering these cutscenes in real time, then they should have just not had the player character in them. I would have preferred that than being immediately yanked out of the experience by seeing the default model. While they did improve how it looks compared to before, it's still very obviously not my character. So why did they think that this was a good idea? Heck, another idea I thought of is that they could have contrived some sort of plot reason to put the player character into some kind of masked plug suit looking costume for the duration of the quest. While it's still not as good as having the player's custom character, it would have at least been plausibly the same character. So the crossover quest was sloppy and scuffed. But that's not exactly new for Tower of Fantasy. However, that's not the only reason why I've decided to discontinue playing the game. Ultimately, it all boils down to the fact that Now, while money is a big part of this statement, it's also about the time and energy that Toph demands. The real reason why I left in the first place, and why I'm quitting now, is that I just cannot justify spending the amount of time and money I would otherwise want to sink into this game. Like I noted in my original review, power creep is still a huge issue in the game, and as far as I can tell, it's only gotten worse. A huge breaking point for me was when I finally realized that I had to retire my A6 for Matrice Lynn. When she first came out, I went all in on her character, partially because I liked her design and kit, and partially because, in my mind, maxing her out would mean I would be set for the long haul no matter what element I shifted to. Do you want to know how long that lasted? 6 months. Well, yes, I did get quite a lot of playtime during those months. That's still insanely short for how much I spent. Unless I keep spending, I've got no choice but to be left in the dust. And unlike the early days of Toph, I no longer hold out hope that the global version of the game will avoid eroding away the time and money I invest into it with power creep. I'm probably gonna trigger a bunch of hardcore Toph peeps by bringing up the G game, but both Genshin and Star Rail have done an immaculate job of managing power creep. I know, Genshin player go 10 minutes without comparing other gacha games to Genshin Challenge, difficulty impossible. But the fact of the matter is, these are competing products and there's value to be had in comparing them. Both Genshin and Star Rail have done a crazy good job of introducing characters that, while undoubtedly more powerful than other characters, also breathe new life into said characters. Sparkle power creeps Bronya? More like, you should use Sparkle with Bronya. I went from regretting investing in Pela and Herta to being glad I could stick them in my Jinmu and Pure Fiction setups. Meanwhile, in Genshin, Furina was practically made to make old characters meta again. Even my boy Diluc is having his day back in the sun thanks to Xianyun. With Tower of Fantasy, you just don't get anything like that. Once a character is out of your top 3, they're basically gone, never to see relevance again. That's why when I saw the only thing you could get from the Eva collab for free was Pen Pen, I knew it was over. Yeah, the mounts from the battle pass is cheap, and sure, I probably could get both Asuka and Rei if I scrounged up enough event rewards this patch, but if I'm not gonna max them out, what's the point? Instead of using this as a chance to win me back, they're just trying to grab whatever cash they can. For those of you used to spending lots of money on gacha, I really just want to put things back into perspective for you. You can get Deep Rock Galactic, one of the best co-op shooters ever made, for $30. Heck, you could even get the Dwarven Legacy Edition with all of the optional cosmetics for $120. You're lucky if that amount gets you to hard pity in Tower of Fantasy. Perhaps if content creation were my full-time job, I could justify the expense because I could deduct it from my taxes. Perhaps if my friends were still into it, I could justify it as the cost of being social. As things are, however, I recognize that it'd be a far better use of resources if I instead played other games and worked on growing this channel with other content. At this point, I've already been through joining the most active guild on my server, only for it to fall apart because of a slow bleed out of players, twice. When I look to the future, I just don't really see anything for ToF. There's a reboot server coming to global, but why would I play that? I don't want to start all over again. I wish the developers had the guts to rebalance the game on the main servers. Heck, they don't even have to nerf the new OP stuff. All they gotta do is just make sure that the new characters don't power creep the old ones, and then slowly buff up the old stuff until they're viable as well. But if there's anything that the Eva collab has shown, it's that they're not willing to do what's best for the long-term viability of this game. And that's why, with great sadness in my heart, I quit the worst game I can't stop playing.
To the end of